Last week, we talked about how we can create more luminosity in our lives, living through clarity, focus, ease, and grace. We looked at some elements of luminosity, being present to beauty, mindfulness, being grateful for the many blessings that we have in our life, and being brave, perhaps willing to do something that we might be afraid of. And tonight, we're going to explore how we can allow grace to be an expression of who we truly are and to be present in all our actions. We'll look at the beautiful spirituality of grace and how it creates luminosity in our lives. In Matthew, verse 11:28, it says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my soul is light." And one of the translations of this is, "Come to me and learn the unforced rhythms of grace." I think that grace is a very misunderstood word. Theologically, we've often defined grace as being in God's favor. And we've misunderstood grace to be something that some distant God chooses to dispense or not to dispense, a God that plays favorites, and that we have to do something in order to earn God's grace. However, in our teaching, we learn that grace isn't something that God chooses to dispense or not, depending on how we show up in life. We don't believe in sin or judgment, and that has a bearing on how God expresses towards us or as us. Religious science philosophy is so beautifully summed up in what we believe, and these are 12 statements that perfectly express our worldview. The 11th statement is, we believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal lovingness, and the eternal givingness of life to all. And so, therefore, grace is not something that some distant God chooses to dispense or not. It's a God quality that resides within each one of us. And we can tap into grace to the degree that we become conscious of it. It's always present. Eric Butterworth said, "Living in a state of grace can mean nothing more or less than living in a disciplined awareness of the divine flow. God's flow is constant. Our experience of it changes with our consciousness." There's a great story that I think so beautifully expresses grace. And this is from Ram Dass, who was taking a trip from one coast to the other. And he decided, since it was such a long trip, that he was going to spend the entire car trip chanting the names of God. And so he was chanting the names of Jesus and Muhammad and Krishna and Allah. And he was driving his big old boat of a car. He was euphoric. And he's chanting the name of Vishnu, which means supreme God in Sanskrit. And he becomes bathed in this beautiful blue light, and he feels the profound presence of God. And then he looks out of his rearview mirror, and he realizes that this is not the blue light of Vishnu, but it's the blue light of a state trooper. And so he pulls over, and he's still in this happy place of seeing Christ consciousness in everything and everyone. And so he joyously hands over his driver's license to the state trooper. And the trooper gets out his ticket book and starts writing him out a ticket. But Ram Dass is continuing to see the face of God in everything. And pretty soon, the state trooper's whole attitude changes. He and Ram Dass started chatting about his trip and why he was undertaking it and what he was doing. And the trooper forgot all about giving him a ticket. And as he was leaving, he told Ram Dass that the only reason he pulled him over is because he was going too slow. Willa Cather, in Death Comes for the Archbishop, said, "Miracles rest not so much upon faces or voices or healing power coming suddenly to us from afar off, but upon our perceptions being made finer, so that just for a moment our eyes can see and our ears can hear what there is about us always." And to me, that is such a beautiful definition of grace. And tonight I want to look at 3 steps to embracing the rhythms of grace: compassion, faith, and inner guidance. Think about what the world would be like if we spent more time understanding and less time judging. Have you ever witnessed a quarrel where neither party had the least intention or ability to see things from the other person's point of view? It's painful. And yet we see that this not only in our own worlds, but we see it sort of on an international and cultural level as well. Studies have shown that when people are more capable of empathy, they are more satisfied in life, they are healthier, and they're more creative. The moment that somebody feels understood and realizes that we see the validity in his or her or their viewpoint, both of us transform. And so compassion is really one of the noblest results of empathy. It is a spiritual quality that brings us out of selfishness and greed. It opens up and unites our hearts. It fills our heart. By gifting ourselves and others with compassion, we can allow grace and serenity to come into our lives. We can find ourselves shifting from a self-centric view of the world to a viewpoint where we embrace all different points of views. And so here are some ways that we can cultivate some more compassion. We can simply open up more to others and be aware of what is happening for them. How often do we create automatic judgments about somebody or something and we have no idea what is going on in their life? We can simply be present to the moment like we talked about last week. The sum of our lives isn't how we perfectly handle everything on our to-do lists. It's really about the impact we have on others. And it's so easy to forget that in this hectic, stressful world that we live in. We can simply think more positive thoughts about others and, just as importantly, more positive thoughts about ourselves. And just be kind. I love the saying, always be kind to people, because you have no idea what battles they're facing. And so this focus on compassion helps bring us in touch to that divine quality of grace. Joan Borshenko says, like the acorn has to die in order to be reborn as an oak tree, we are all in the midst of being transformed. With that transformation, we can become more compassionate, caring people who offer our unique gifts and service to a larger whole. Change offers us the possibility of growing beyond our perceived limitations to the fullness of our divine potential. The second element of experiencing grace is faith. We may not always know how our path is unfolding, so at times we might feel uncertain or challenged or simply stuck in life. Often we might be unsure where to go or what choice to make. And when circumstances around us feel daunting, life might feel overwhelming. But it's so important to remember that there is always this inner grace that knows that we are steadily walking towards the solution. And to recognize this takes us away from our limited perception into this more universal vision. Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, and Love, says this about faith. Faith is walking face first and full speed in the dark. If we truly knew all the answers in advance as to the meaning of life and the nature of God and to the destiny of our souls, our belief would not be a leap of faith. It wouldn't be a courageous act of humanity. It would be, well, just a prudent insurance policy. In May of 2011, Brian Dickinson solo summited Mount Everest. There was nobody above 26,000 feet as he made his way to the 29,000-foot summit. Shortly after reaching the roof of the world, he went completely snowblind. The sun had burned his corneas due to prolonged UV exposure. Alone and blind, with only touch and sound, he inched his way back down to his base camp. And during the descent, he took a huge fall at 28,000 feet. He rolled a slab avalanche and he ran out of oxygen. When asked what got him through this ordeal, he said two things: focus and faith. He said he kept telling himself to keep moving and find a reason, even just one, to get beyond the immediate struggle. And that's how he kept his focus. He said on Everest he never gave up his faith to survive. And as he made his way down, he said he felt this calming presence around him. Though he was alone, Brian said, the truth is that we're never alone. No matter what your beliefs, there's always someone there, whether it's faith in religion, in family, or yourself. Never give up faith. He climbed over 30 hours. He was exhausted. He lost 20 pounds. He had 2 black eyes. He wouldn't regain his vision for over 2 months. And he could have easily lain down and fallen asleep forever on that mountain. But he recognized an inner focus, an inherent grace, and he never gave up his faith that he would make it. That is the power of faith, trusting that the universe is surrounding us in grace, that there is a rhythm of grace that we can step into and embrace. And finally, the third element of grace is inner guidance. The luminosity of grace is knowing that it already exists within us. There's nothing we need to do other than to bring that forth, other than allow the truth of who we are to simply shine at our deepest self. Maria Nemeth tells this great story about a dream that one of her clients had. In this dream, her client saw a group of people sitting around a huge table. There was this big celebratory feast taking place with all this sumptuous food on the table. And she said that some of the people at the table were kind of pushed away and they kind of had their eyes closed, and others had their eyes wide open and they were digging into this incredible feast. And around this table were seated saints and wise people and luminaries from all faith walks. And she said in this dream, from time to time, a few of the people with their eyes closed would suddenly open their eyes and realize that they were at this table surrounded by these amazing people and there was all this incredible food. And at that moment that would happen, a cheer would go up from everybody at the table as they were welcomed to the feast. And what Maria Nemeth says about this is, could it be that heaven is spread out before us right now like a banquet? Could it be that when we're hungry, it isn't because of an absence of spiritual food? And so I just invite you this week to consciously open your eyes and be present to the feast that is always in front of you. It is when we look at all the parts of ourselves without judgment that we can become comfortable with our whole. We can drop all the guilt and the shame. We can acknowledge that who we are right now and in any given moment is perfectly okay. And when we can stop listening to what people think about us or do or say, we can stand tall in the belief of who we are and the knowing of how to have the grace to live a good life. Because when we're true to ourselves, we are whole and complete. And being true to ourselves means that our validation comes from that grace that we carry within. Inner guidance or inner truth can be so transformational if we allow it to be. It awakens us to the courage to be honest and forthcoming. Are we tolerating the consequences of being ourselves, or are we fully embracing the gift of who we actually are? When we can reveal the beauty of our best intentions and shift in that direction, then we can begin to live a life inspired by grace and luminosity. We can take some deep breaths and remember that it is within the grace of a deep breath that we can pause and recognize the control that we actually do have in our lives. And even though life can be unpredictable, surprising, and challenging, if we choose to accept the moment as it comes, instead of assuming the world will rise to our expectations, we will find ourselves better able to handle the ups and the downs of life. Danny Marie Robinson has a great mantra that we can practice and become more aware of our inner guidance and the grace that always surrounds us. And it is, I choose to see the lessons in my bad days, in my mistakes, and in every heartache. I will no longer yearn for what was, wonder why me, or what if my way to the future. I will recognize the inherent strength in vulnerability and trust myself in responding to whatever tough days challenge me moving forward. I will do my very best to choose love over fear, understanding over being right, and conscious breaths over fuming disbelief. I accept myself and every moment that has led me here. I will never forget what a gift it is to simply be alive. We have been created in the image and likeness of God, and wherever God is, we are. When we finally get that we are the living emanations of Spirit, we recognize that grace is actually the truth of who we are, and we come to realize that nothing can harm or hurt the indestructible Spirit that is us. And although we might be facing difficult challenges or changes or transformation, the Spirit or God within us is unchanging, unending, and unafraid. And so through compassion, faith, and inner guidance, we can step into the ever-present grace that is always flowing in us, around us, and through us.
So as we breathe in that breath of life, knowing that that is the divine flowing through us, I feel that and know that just as the sun rises every morning and the sun sets every evening, feeling the divine throughout the day. And I know this and feel this for myself and for everyone present, that presence of the divine is such a glorious way of feeling life, living, and knowing. And that this presence feels and knows into each body that we have, each cell that flows through us. I see this and know this, and I claim for each and every one of us, including myself, this beautiful health and well-being, knowing that health flows as other things flow, as the world flows, as life flows. It is the well-being that we are and who we are flows through each of us. This breath that we have, these cells that flow, this knowingness that the divine is this place that we can settle into and find peace in. And as we find peace in our bodies, and we find peace in our world, and we find that way of moving through it that fills us, we know it to be the best place for us to be, that creates health, creates well-being, creates a knowingness in each of us that we are exactly where we need to be. And I'm so grateful to hold this and know this health and well-being fills me. So grateful to speak these words and to know this to be so. And I release it knowing that it is as it is spoken, and so it is.